Since I've discussed so many terrible episodes from this show and the fact that I've just finished the movie, I'm going to review one of the good episodes from Foster's from now on. Granted, it's going to be much more limited when it comes to other shows in the way, but at the same time, I'll give you what you want when you request me good episodes from this show. Room with the Feud really feels like an episode that does happen in the real world. Granted, when it comes to hotels and mostly the building of Foster's in this, I still think that it mostly won't happen, but when it comes to college dorms, it really does. I can easily tell that college dorms can really have people fight over to have the better room, but at the end of the day, it's really a matter of progress on who's going to get the room, who does the most chores, or who's the best person in the campus. In this episode where Blue, Coco, Eduardo, and Will find each other to get the room for themselves, it's actually the biggest highlight in this entire episode, mainly for how great the entire bedroom is. We've seen the Foster's building having so many variety of rooms, but I'm gonna say this right now, even after 15 years, this is still one of the best looking rooms in this show at least, or in cartoon animation. I may not like basketball, but considering of how much that they wanted to make this room mostly sports-like, it really does make sense onto why Wilt wants this room. And as this episode continues with them feuding, it really feels a lot more accurate when you can really see Peanut Butter ending up getting the room, while the other characters are extremely upset with Mac about it. Then again, Mac appeals later on in this episode, so he didn't know what was going on most of the time. Whenever he gets into shenanigans, he just needs to accept what's going on, but in here, this isn't really his problem to begin with. But I have to admit, while he's trying to have Peanut Butter leave the new bedroom so that the other characters can have the bedroom, is actually kind of humorous, because noisiness, it ends up backfiring, and then them tearing up the bedroom itself, it's actually a moment that is done much more better compared to Duchess of Wells. And when we get to see moments of Frankie being thankful that most of the other characters do most of the chores, it's mostly a breath of fresh air for Frankie in this episode. It actually shows that there are other episodes where Frankie can be able to catch a break while she's not being tortured most of the time. And Peanut Butter in this episode, even if he doesn't do much other than just be mostly another competitor for the other characters to deal with when it comes to this whole feud, I have to admit that he's mostly there just so that he can actually drive the other characters into insanity, just so that they can have the room. But that doesn't really mean that his character is really unlikable, because he is somewhat relatable when it comes to him just not being most of the stuff that the other characters are doing, and the fact that he's in a building with so many other imaginary friends in the meantime. Granted, he ends up leaving to go with his creator, but at the same time, it was mostly Mac just trying to help the other characters. And as for this episode's ending, while Eduardo ends up winning the room to himself, he doesn't like being alone most of the time because he's mostly scared, which leads to the other characters heading into the bedroom because they actually miss each other. So apparently, they miss being roommates. This is like the closest way for these characters to get close to each other when it comes to their relationships. And with this show being mostly mean-spirited when it comes to other episodes, I will admit that this is like the closest we're ever going to see these characters having some sanity in them, mainly for how respectful they are towards one another, even though that Blue ends up being the opposite of his friends. But we can also see that Blue doesn't like being alone in the bedroom, which I have to admit that this is pretty much the moment where Blue shouldn't never been Flanderized to begin with. I would discuss more and more about that, but I've already talked about that when I reviewed House of Blues earlier this year, so go check that review out so that you can see my opinions on it. So, in all honesty, this episode is a really good episode. it is mostly a shame that bad episodes instantly overshadow episodes like these, but the more I watch these good episodes, I might see the positives overshadowing the negatives, if that's a possibility. I give this episode a 7.5 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole crew.